I'm Rajeshri. A very warm welcome to you all in the first episode of 2024. And I'm immensely delighted to share this experimental journey of mine with you all in this year as well. And a huge thanks for being with me. Today, as the title suggests, it is a musical union between Jane Austen and Emily Bronte, the two pillars of English literature. Before I start the narrative, I just wanted to make it very clear with you all. Neither I am a professor of English literature, nor I am a critic. Rather, I went to medical school and management school, apparently far from the world of literature. Maybe philosophically not, but that's a completely different discussion altogether. But I was exposed, like many of you, to their novels since my teenage. There were a lot of discussions used to happen in our drawing room conversation about the characters of their novels. So, few months ago, when I was listening to a lecture, and the speaker who was talking about Emily Bronte quoted Calvino, Italo Calvino, Italian essayist, novelist, journalist, quote, saying why the work of Emily Bronte and Jane Austen, they are classics. I was very much influenced by that. And I got hold of the book of Calvino. I read it, and then I straight away decided to do this episode. Where Calvino said that a classic is a book which, even when we read it for the first time, gives the sense of reading something we have read before. He continued saying that classic is again a book to which you cannot remain indifferent and which helps you define yourself in relation or even in opposition to it. And then he beautifully said another thing, which I'm sure all of you will agree with me, that it persists as background noise even when a present that is totally incompatible with it holds sway. Reading this book, what I have realized that the characters of their novels, they exist around us. The few of the characteristics of those characters, they actually exist within us. Like if I give an example, if we talk about Sense and Sensibility, Marion and Eleanor Dashwood, then Cornel Brandon, what a lovely man. Then John Willoughby and Mrs. Middleton. They are very familiar faces which exist in different forms, through different characters in the society. Then talking about Emma, Harriet Smith, Emma herself, Jane Fairfax, Frank Churchill, Mr. Knightley. Then, of course, talking about Pride and Prejudice. Who can forget Lydia, Mrs. Bennet? Of course, the bright and intelligent Lizzie, Miss Darcy, of course, Charlotte Lucas. And then coming to the characters of Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff, without a surname. Catherine Anshaw, the female protagonist. The good Victorian servant, Nellie Dean. Edgar Linton, another narrator, Mr. Lockwood. They all exist among us in the society. Today I'm sitting in Yorkshire, an hour and a half drive from Haworth, Bronte's family home. The West Yorkshire moors, northern part of England. Very stormy, windy, rainy and gloomy, which we could feel when we read Wuthering Heights. And I thought it would be best to read a poem written by Emily Bronte herself, because we know she was a great poet. She wrote more than 100 poems and one novel. So it would be, I think, the best way to feel the atmosphere of, to feel and create the atmosphere of Wuthering Heights through her poem. It's called A Tyrant Spell. The night is darkening round me. The wind, the wild winds coldly blow. But a tyrant spell has bound me, and I cannot go. The giant trees are bending, their bare boughs wet with snow, and the storm is fast descending, and yet I cannot go. Clouds beyond clouds above me, wests beyond wests below, but nothing drear can move me. I will not, cannot go. And I continue reading a little passage by Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte's elder sister, who knew her, I think, too well. And she said about her sister again and again that Emily was not a gentle dove. Emily was a solitude-loving raven. In her words, my sister Emily loved the moors. Flowers brighter than the rose bloomed in the blackest of the heath for her. Out of a southern hollow in a livid hillside, her mind could make an Eden. She found in the bleak solitude many and dear delights, and not the least, and the best loved was liberty. Liberty was the breath of Emily's nostrils. Without it, she perished. When we read Wuthering Heights, rather I should use when we reread Wuthering Heights, I think we could feel that. As Virginia Woolf said, that Haworth express the Brontes and the Brontes express Haworth. It's like the snail fits to its shell. And to end the discussion about Emily, I thought I should mention this. As Charlotte Bronte said again, under an unsophisticated culture, in artificial tests and on an unpretending outside lay a secret power and the fire that might have informed the brain and kindled the veins of a hero. all know that Wuthering Heights is not a typical love story. It is a story of obsession, violent passion, supernaturals. But it is a classic. Because, just to bring Calvino back for the last time, I think it was so appropriate to say that Wuthering Heights is a book that has never finished saying what it has to say. So we go back again and again. So before I go and play my music, which I have composed for Wuthering Heights, I thought that in order to create the mood, it would be best for me to read out a very important passage from the Wuthering Heights, the book itself. It is a conversation between Catherine Earnshaw, the female protagonist, and the good Victorian servant Nellie Dean. Catherine: if I were in heaven, Nellie, I should be extremely miserable. Nellie: because you are not fit to go there, I answered. All sinners would be miserable in heaven. Catherine: but it is not for that. I dreamt once that I was there. Nellie: I tell you, I won't hearken to your dreams, Miss Catherine. I'll go to bed. I interrupted again. She laughed and held me down, and for I made a motion to leave my chair. Catherine: this is nothing, cried she. I was only going to say that heaven did not seem to be my home, and I broke my heart with weeping to come back to earth. And the angels were so angry that they flung me out into the middle of the heath on the top of Wuthering Heights, where I woke, sobbing with joy. That will do to explain my secret as well as the other. I have no more business to marry Edgar Linton than I have to be in heaven. And if the wicked man in there had not brought Heathcliff so low, I shouldn't have thought of it. It would degrade me to marry Heathcliff now. So he shall never know how I love him. And that not because he is handsome, Nellie, but because he is more myself than I am. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same. And Linton's is as different as a moonbeam from lightning, or frost from fire. My love for Linton is like the foliage in the woods. Time will change it, I am well aware, as winter changes the trees. My love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight, but necessary. Nellie, I am Heathcliff. He is always, always in my mind, not as a pleasure, any more than I am always a pleasure to myself, but as my own being. I think, as we have said, that mentioned that it was not a typical love story. Emily Bronte, rather all the Brontes, they did not write the way their contemporary female writers used to write. In their novels, in their poems, it was all about human emotions. And that is the reason I chose Tschaikowsky's Swanlake. I took a very little portion from there, and as I always do, I borrowed the melody and incorporated my style here and there. Because Tchaikovsky is a composer whose music has got a melancholic beauty, a gorgeous color, and volcanic passion, which shocked the conservative and fascinated the public. No need to explain his music unless to condemn it. It was too human, too original, too utterly sincere for that. It winged its way from heart to heart. And as always, my wonderful piano teacher, who himself is a distinguished pianist, accomplished composer, poet, writer, Mr. James Billingham. James helped me immensely to compose this music, because another composer whose work I have incorporated is Brahms, which was suggested by James. And I don't think any composer would be more appropriate than Brahms in order to express Wuthering Heights. Because if we look at Brahms, he started his career playing in brothel and bars. Then he met Robert Schumann. He got his library from him. And Robert Schumann was a scholar who knew everything about music, what happened before him. So Brahms's music has got an immense influence of Bach and Beethoven. And his music is dark, yet subtle. It's innovative. It is beautiful, yet melancholic. So what I'm going to play in front of you to pay my tribute to Wuthering Heights is a combination of Swanlake and Brahms Intermezzo. One of Intermezzo. And I have incorporated a little bit of motif which I have composed, and then I have changed a bit of dynamics and texture in order to create the feel. Obviously, I mentioned everything in the description box about the musical pieces. So I request all of you to think. We are taking a journey from Bronte's family home in Haworth on a wintry, stormy day towards the top Withens, where the ruin of Wuthering Heights situated, as Bronte took her inspiration from. And hopefully we all can feel the hidden passion, the hidden supernatural feel, the love which is not in an accepted way of that typical 19th century. All these, the different expression of human emotion should be there in this music. So I invite all of you, and obviously Emily Bronte too, in this little music room, to join us for this little composition of mine. Obviously not entirely composed by me. Thanks for listening. So that is all about our Emily Bronte. Now, coming to Jane Austen. Jane Austen died just 1 year before Emily Bronte was born. But she painted a completely different picture through her novels. It was the southern part of England. It was a luxurious mansion, pretty cottages, beautiful hamlets, rigidly divided social classes. But she took out the hidden hypocrisy and the irony through the drawing room conversation of those characters. That is Jane Austen. She was the queen of dialogue. She is the one who did not go and attend many seminars. She didn't go and sit down with her contemporary writers. Alone, sitting in her parlor in Hampshire, she's the one who discovered free, indirect style of writing. The internal conflicts among her characters, as we have mentioned already in Pride and Prejudice, in Emma, in Mansfield Park, in Persuasion, through her dialogues, she exposed their inner conflicts. And I was reading a book called The Joy of Jane. And believe me, the writer, he's actually a Jane Austen critic, Richard Jenkyns, said so beautifully that Austen was 5 years younger than Beethoven, but whose music, as far we can tell, she never heard. And all her novels concern a young woman who falls in love with a man and marries him. So it is easy to see her as an old-fashioned figure, a late representative of Augustan orderliness and decorum. Someone who did conventional things with special accomplishment. But she was actually an innovator, constantly experimenting. She was also a mistress of that most difficult art of making characters who are funny. Not because we laugh at them, but because we laugh with them, as she showed in the creation of Elizabeth Bennet and her father. Comedy was her chosen mode. And lastly, he said, modern though she is, in important senses, she was of course a woman of a time, but in a distinctive way. She is both an 18th century Stoic and a 19th century Romantic, and a moralist whose morals are wrapped in irony. Yes, that is Jane Austen. So when we read her novels, and as I'm going to play the music for her novels, what I thought, I chose a English ballad because, in contrast, when we read Wuthering Heights and finish the book, the way we feel, it's completely different when we finish Emma, Sense and Sensibility, and Pride and Prejudice. Most of the time there will be a happy feeling inside us, because when we see the happy union between Lizzie and Mr. Darcy, when we see a happy union between Eleanor and Mr. Ferrers, and Marion and Colonel Brandon, it makes us happy. When you see all those read about those country dances between the characters happening there, somehow there is an element of gay and joy. So I chose an English ballad, which is very dear to my heart. Actually, I did play it before. It's called Dumble, Deary, Dumb. It's about a country boy called Richard who goes and proposes Miss Jean, but she refuses. But this country boy gallops away with a happy tune, singing that tune, and everybody there were laughing, and there was a happy mood created all around him. So I thought I would play that, and I chose another composer with the advice and immense help of James. It's Schumann's Melody. Schumann wrote it for his 3 daughters, and it is also a joyful tune. So I kind of fuse those two together, and I thought that would be the best way to pay my tribute to the novels of Jane Austen. And before I start, though the writing styles of both these novelists are very different, but one thing both of them did at a regular basis throughout their life, they played piano almost every day. They used to love playing piano. So let me play the little composition, which of course not my original composition, but we can, from the wild northern Yorkshire moors, we can all transport ourselves to the southern countryside of Hampshire, maybe Steventon, where her family home was, Jane Austen's. And we will finish it with a happy note, as it is the first episode of this show. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for listening.